Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone out there in YouTube land. This is Toby with Minor Ridge Armory coming to you again live on a Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and to give you another one of our free webinars in our series of content we're putting out there for those of you who are stuck at home during this wonderful pandemic that we're having here in the United States. Hoping to give you a little bit of education and share a little bit of knowledge if we can on something we may or may not even know anything about. So, all that said, tonight we're going to be talking about drones. So I've actually had quite a few people talking to me about, surveillance. Quite a few people talking to me about search and rescue, those types of scenarios. And I am by no stretch of the imagination an expert or a subject matter expert on the subject of drones, on the subject of search and rescue, on the subject of being surveillance and counter surveillance and all that good magickery. But I thought it would be a good idea to bring somebody on who is at least an expert in the subject of drones. So I thought I'd invite a guy over from the Alamance Drone. Let's see if I can get this right. Alamance County Drone Center, I believe it is, and a very interesting story about that website and what it's doing as of today. So I thought I'd bring a subject matter expert in from that area to talk about drones and to kind of go through some of the overview of the laws and some of the use cases for drones, the ones, the best models you'd want to buy and price points, high, medium, and low, Cadillacs, versus the Lamborghinis of the drone world to get you into the drones, regardless of what your organization size is or whether you're just doing it for personal use. So, for example, if you're a fire department that's looking into getting drones for your usage, well, what are the laws? What are the price points? How much do I need to spend? What do I need to know? Those kinds of topics. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Scotty Harrington and let him introduce himself and see what we got. Mr.
Hey,
Harrington, how are you this evening?
hey, I'm doing very good. I hope you are.
I am living the dream, sir, as always. Thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate you jumping on the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
Good deal. So, see, as we're pulling you in, let's see who all we've got out here already joining us. So we got Buck out there. How we doing, Buck? Good to see you, man. Let some of your friends know we're going to be on here. We're going to try to jabber off for about an hour. So come on in and join us and learn something a little bit about drones tonight, hopefully. Um, so as people start trickling in, I'll kind of give them little introductions and say hey to them, and we'll try to throw some of you on the screen. Rules of engagement, as all of y'all know who've been hanging out with us on the webinars, is forgive me if I miss your question. I'm trying to produce over here, trying to talk to Scotty, trying to throw content up for him, that kind of thing, and still trying to reply back to everybody. So if I miss your question over in the comments, you can always leave a comment below, and I'll get back to you sometime in the future. But ultimately, just this is an interactive show. We want you guys to ask questions. Feel free to jump in with anything you're wanting to know. So I'm going to shut up for a minute and put you up on screen, Scotty, and let you kind of introduce yourself, kind of talk about how long maybe you've been in the drone world, what some of your expertise is, maybe not necessarily where you work, but what you do for fun and work and everything outside of drones. And we'll kind of start from there.
Well, absolutely. Thank you. Honestly, I first had started searching drones all the way back from when DJI had first released the very first Phantom, even before they were had cameras on them. That was an afterthought. You had to mount that yourself. But that to give an introduction, I don't normally do these, so if I'm a little nervous, just bear with me. My name's Scotty Harrington, and I. I've put in more hours than I'd like to admit for drone research, anything from videography, the picture format, the ways to connect them to a computer, pretty much every single mode that you can possibly put them in all different types. The primary ones that I've focused have been the DJI drones. Any from the very smallest ones that you could get up back when they first released their cheap Spark. They got the Tello, that's like $100 little learning drone, all the way up to the Inspire series and the Matrice, professional ones that are used for, even like mounting flamethrowers. We can get into that later, but I can tell you that I've almost, I feel like I've just about seen it all, and some stuff I haven't seen that I'm actually pretty eager to get to try someday in person. So I would say one of my first actual experiences with a drone in my hands was about back in, I'd say, the beginning of 2017, and since then I've taken it from there into an obsession, and uh, and had actually started the Alexander County Drone Center at one point. Um, and so with the signed Facebook page and uh, really trying to bring this into a scenario where it's an educational, it's like social club where parents could bring their kids over, and it could be something they could learn about drones in a controlled environment with an instructor, where it'd be safe, and they wouldn't have to worry about crashing it. We could have it in beginner mode. Um, but there just was very little interest that came from that, to the point where up until an event that happened just earlier today. Um, that
Yeah,
that's
don't give
that.
away the don't
Yeah,
give
I don't
away the
want to give away the
surprise on that
secret
one.
just
Hold
yet,
that
but
one.
yeah, you're gonna like that. It's
Stick around to later in the show for that story. It's
yeah.
actually very, 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 very good story and very, very, very relevant to owning a drone. So,
hmm
uh, but yeah, Scotty. So, and I also want to put a pin in that flamethrower story. Don't
Yes,
you didn't tell
yes.
me about that?
That's
You
under
didn't.
weaponizing drones.
Yeah, yeah. We will have to talk about. So I'm going to add that as a bullet point to weaponizing drones. Hang on, weaponizing. How do you think I'm joking? I'm totally not. Okay. So that said, I've got a PowerPoint down here, and I'm not going to throw it up on screen. Those of y'all who are regular attendees of my of some of my webinars, I have a tendency to throw up PowerPoints. I'm not going to do that tonight. Okay. And I'm also not going to introduce myself. For those of you who stick around, hopefully you know who I am and what I do. But what I do want to point out is, so Scotty, you're also kind of a computer nerd a little bit, right? So you've not just been around drones and the technologies. You've been around computers for a couple of years too, right?
I, that is an understatement. I pretty much lived and breathed technology my whole life. That's what I love to do for my job and hobby. So
Good deal.
that's what I love.
Good deal.
Yeah,
Good
as you
deal.
can kind of see here, I've turned the entire basement into kind of like a LAN party gaming center, virtual reality, drone camera, studio, you name it.
The ultimate technology man cave. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. I
That's the
was
way to
gonna
go.
set up on that side so you can see the whole room, but this is just half of it.
Oh, you're good. You're good. So, for those of y'all out there viewing, I do want to go. I'm not going to throw the PowerPoint up here on the screen, but I am going to just give you a quick rundown of what we are going to be talking about tonight. And I'm going to try to get through all the topics and still be respectful of everybody's time and try to keep the show to about an hour. And so, from a format perspective, I wanted to kind of talk to Scotty about, you know, if you're new to drones and you don't know anything and you're wanting to break into it again for the executive protection industry, surveillance, search and rescue, whatever, in general, what all do I need to know to get started about the technology and so on, just the technology, the price points, etc. Then I wanted to kind of roll into what the laws are as related to what you need to know, some of the particular use cases. So, in other words, what is the law in relation to search and rescue versus the law for me filming somebody out in my yard doing yard work? Put a pin in that one too.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, definitely. Then, of course, the price points. We'll talk about that as we go through there of low, medium, and high. What's your Cadillac and what's your Lamborghini. Then, Scotty had some information about specifically with regards to search and rescue with some of the local fire departments and some of the local rescue agencies where he's worked with them and kind of talked to them in the past and talked about their programs and how those work. And so I wanted to roll into that. And now reconnaissance and surveillance, Scotty doesn't have a lot of expertise in that area, but he can certainly offer advice on which ones are quieter, for example, which
Oh
ones
yeah.
have less lights, which ones have better quality cameras, which ones have better quality night vision, that kind of thing. Then finally, we'll talk about the tax deduction capabilities as well as some of the licensing that you may have to purchase, which will roll in with the laws. And then finally, now apparently flamethrowers and weaponizing these things. But hey, if we get to that, we get to it. If not, YouTube would probably thank me for not getting around to it. So, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much. But anybody that we can get in here, we're trying to educate as much as we can. So thank you, sir. All right, Scotty. So I'll shut up for a minute and just kind of just maybe if I could get you to talk through at a very high level of if for me, for example, because I have no drone, I've never flown one. I'm terrified to. I'm afraid I'm going to break it and spend a ton of money, or get addicted and spend a ton of money. Either way, it's going to cost me a ton of money. And so, what would somebody like me need to know at the ground level to get started?
Well, realistically, if you've ever flown any of those really cheap drones, the little small ones, the ones you get for like
Mhm.
$35, at Walmart, those are significantly different than even one of the cheapest, higher end drones you can get from, say, DJI or others that have GPS stability, have sensors to detect how far up above the ground they are. Um, they almost fly themselves. It is almost that easy now for anything Mavic Mini or higher. And so, depending on if it's just a hobby to be able to get footage of your yard or your house, or going to a friend's house, and as long as you're not doing it for money, there is no problem with having a small drone and flying it. But there definitely are some laws that would need to be adhered to, even on your own property. So,
Okay. So
um,
before we get into the laws, though, let me ask you a question because I've noticed you've mentioned Mavic several times. So,
yes,
and I noticed you mentioned a couple things. You mentioned the more advanced systems with headsets and screens versus just like cheap Walmart versions and things like that. So there's a two-part question there. Number one is why Mavic in particular, and some of the other, and the accoutrement for it. And then second part to that question is, if you were looking for, if you were, say, in a non-permissive environment, you're looking for, similar to like a burner phone, or looking for, that identity obfuscation or whatever, are there some cheap ones that you could just run into Walmart, pay cash for, put to use in a surveillance, sourcing from your local environment, kind of thing? Like if you got dropped off in the middle of nowhere, are there some that would be not on par necessarily with the Mavics, but ones that were worth use?
the biggest difference between ones that are going to be worth use and just ignore them are going to be ones that have a gimbal on them. Because
Hmm.
otherwise, if you have a camera that's fixed solid to the drone, if you fly forward and the drone has to tilt forward, that camera is now pointing towards the ground. You come to a stop, the drone has to put the brakes on, now it's pointing towards the air. No matter how the drone moves around, the camera's going to move around. If you have a gimbal, no matter how the drone moves, the camera is going to stay completely still. So that is the number one thing that I would say that anyone should take a look at and see if they're wanting to even go pick up one that's like $100. You're you're almost wasting your money if you don't have some sort of stability on that camera, because when that drone moves, and it will, that camera moves, and your footage is just it's gone. So
So, do they have any like that at Wally World with gimbals?
I believe they do when I had seen them, but as far as an experience with them, I haven't got to dig into
Okay.
them. Some of the reviews I've seen online have pretty much said that they're made to be throwaway. So,
Well, and
um,
that's exactly the point. So that's exactly what I'm referring to. Is, so if, let's say, you're having, again, source locally, like let's say, for example, you're doing some advanced work, and you're in an area for, one of your principals, and you didn't, fly in all of your equipment because it costs a ton to fly stuff on an airplane, and of course the TSA is going to frown upon all that electrical weird equipment and stuff. We can talk
yep,
more about that when we get into the
yep,
laws.
yep.
FAA is definitely moody on that one. And then you get there and you realize, hey, there's this blind spot that I would love to put a camera on. I'd love to get up there and look at it and see. And so locally sourced is a big deal. It would literally be disposable. And so you're saying in those cases, as long as it has a gimbal, you'd gamble on it. If it had a gimbal, you'd gamble.
I'll let that one fly.
Okay.
Putting it, yeah, there.
Ah,
Sorry. I didn't want to let that one take off the ground, but it did. Anyways,
ah.
the,
It's growing wings, man. It's growing wings. I'm just saying.
uh, okay, so seriously, out of all of them that I have seen, from the little tiny ones that you can fly around inside of a room to the even bigger ones that they try to say, oh yeah, it's just as good as some of the best stuff that DJI puts out, as long as it has a gimbal, that's going to be your key indicator as to a solid, stable, smooth, still image. Otherwise, it's just all over the place.
Okay.
Um,
And for
you,
with, go ahead.
well, one of the questions you had asked about getting started, the
Yeah.
number one thing that anyone could possibly do to get started on learning about drones, the big ones, the small ones, the cheap, expensive ones, what type that you need, and what type of signal do they put? I mean, all of that stuff. There are more reviews than you could ever possibly watch on YouTube already that people have done who've spent more time than we'll ever put into on any specific model or type. So before you go buy that one at Walmart, go ahead and type in that model on YouTube, watch a review, watch two reviews or three. So that way you're not just throwing your money away. And also compare that to some of the other ones. So you're not going to end up with something that you wish you hadn't bought.
Okay. All right. So you're saying maybe if you're locally sourcing it, walk into Wally World, see what they got on the shelves, go back out to your car and watch some of the YouTube videos, check them out, see if they got what you're wanting it, then go back in there. Now, from if I were having to use it, and again, this kind of leans into the technology question about the difference between the Mavics and the headsets versus iPad versus just driving whatever screen on the controller. This leans kind of into that. So um, content retention, right? So if you bought one at Wally World, is it SD card? Is it streaming by Bluetooth at that distance? I mean, how are you capturing that footage and then regaining it?
That's another great question, because some of the cheaper ones, they don't even have where you could have onboard memory on the drone itself. So then you're only getting the quality of what will stream to your cell phone and
Mhm.
record onto that as a video file. So again, having onboard memory, a micro SD card, so it doesn't take up very much weight and it's very small. That would be another indicator for something that's going to be a little higher quality than just those that just stream to your phone, because that's less cost they had to put into the machine itself, and you're going to get much less quality.
Now, streaming to a phone is a big thing for when you're doing advanced work. That's a really big thing because you and your whole team can actually stream video to one another. You can use apps like Zello, and you can be constantly communicating and sharing video backwards and forwards and things. So that's a really big thing. But you mentioned something there that's concerning to me. So range of cell phone to the drone, if it's up in the air, how far away is that thing even going to be able to get to be able to capture video on your phone?
Exactly. That's a great, great question, because most of them that are only 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection to your phone is, I would say, line of sight, but depending on where you are, that it may start dying before it even goes out of your sight. One of the better types of connectivity on DJI's side is what they call OcuSync. That's where you'll hear about drones getting 2 and 3, maybe up to 4 miles of range. And then
Mm,
even on the newer and bigger ones, they can even go more than that. So definitely out of line of sight, but it's intended so that way if you were to fly behind the house or behind the other place, so okay, let's say you have a spotter over there you can see, and there's people who can see, you don't have to worry about signal issues. You don't have to worry about degradation of the stream of video coming back to your device, your phone or your tablet or whatever you're using. So you are going to have significantly less range if it's Wi-Fi only.
Okay, so disclaimer: we are going to get into the laws and about where you are and are not allowed to fly in fly space or in airspace. Are you not able to get over on two people's property and so on. But what I was talking about was specifically with regards to advanced work for executive protection individuals or somebody in a high threat situation where you already have permission to be surveilling the area or doing your advanced work there. So line of sight. So ultimate optimum weather conditions to 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. Do they make 5.0 gigahertz Wi-Fi for drones, or is it just 2.4?
I've noticed a lot of time they'll use the 2.4 connection for flight controls, and then they'll use the 5 gigahertz connection for the video stream. And
Okay,
you'll usually notice that your indicator for, whoa, you're getting too far away, you start losing the video stream. You'll still
okay,
have control of the drone. So, like if you're flying forward, you start losing it, just pull back on the stick, it'll come back towards you, because you'll always have the control. You'll lose your video connection feed before you lose control of the drone.
okay. Yeah, and then there's an auto return on some of the more expensive ones, and we'll get into that in a minute too. So line of sight, then, by your definition, in perfect weather conditions with a relatively modern phone, 300 feet, 600 feet.
I'm actually going to give you a very real number based on my experience with a recent cell phone to drone connection
Okay.
here at my house, which has very little interference. There's uh, very little issues with interference. Stand by 1 second. And so from where I was standing to where I started losing signal was as far away as about 500 feet.
So are
And
you going
so
to
that
share?
was
Are you
from
sharing an image, or are you just talking
oh,
it through?
that's just
Okay.
500 feet. Yep. So
So
I pull up the map so that way I can references to tell you. So I wasn't off in my number.
just
So
shy of 200 yards, basically about 100 feet.
holding the cell phone up high and trying to point it towards the drone, it started to lose signal right about 500 feet. And that's
Okay.
just the hotspot Wi-Fi connection from drone to phone.
Now that's 500 feet out. What about up?
So you are only allowed to go up 400 feet maximum per FAA rules. So you wouldn't be able to go any higher than that. But I would imagine the connection up would be about the same.
So, well, no,
So
but what I'm saying though is up and out. So were you up 400 and out 5?
up about 200 feet. So
Up about 200 and out
yeah,
500. Okay.
so above any trees, above anything that would cause interference or getting in the way. So the drone could see the phone could see the drone, and there was nothing causing interference in between.
That's still pretty good. I mean, you're segueing into the laws, and so we'll jump into that next. But that's
Yeah.
actually still pretty good for a Wally World, gimbal, SD card, telephone controlled. That's pretty solid. I mean,
And that's under perfect conditions. If you're near a house or several houses that have Wi-Fi, that's going to come back way, way further. The distance I was flying was not towards any houses. It was as clear and open, perfect a condition as you could expect.
okay. So then you're saying if I were surveilling, say, a hotel or a venue, a stadium, a football stadium, something like that, if I was trying to surveil in those areas, their in-house Wi-Fi is going to interfere even with the most expensive ones too.
The more dense interference connections, Wi-Fi, microwaves, you name it, is going to cause interference with your phone to the drone. Another instance that I can think of where I was experiencing the same thing, and it was just a terrible connection, was because I was not very far away from where the wireless router was for the house, and it was putting out a very strong signal. So we're talking only maybe 200 feet, if that, and I was losing signal. So I was trying to figure out what was going on. So out of a test, I had him turn off his router, and the signal immediately got better.
Listen, Buck's got the idea. He can do that.
Selfie stick.
Problem
Nice.
problem solved. He's got a 300. He's got a 300-foot one. I've seen it. So, uh, so that segues into the law. So you mentioned you're only allowed to go up 400 feet, and he mentioned also. So I would imagine electromagnetic interference is what he's talking about. Actually hurts the signal too.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that kind of spins up into the laws, talking about power lines, how close can you get to them, talking about how high can you go up, talking about the radius out from airports, talking about the laws of impeding over onto someone else's property, personal versus commercial property. And then we'll segue into into your fun story about some of the use cases and how the law actually come back to bite you at the tail end of all that. So
Very good. Very good. Definitely some basics, absolute basics of it. Like some of the first things you'll ever learn about drones is going to be you cannot fly any higher than feet. Above that is they're trying to give this buffer between 400 and 500 feet for manned aircraft. So the preference is that you stay underneath where any manned aircraft would normally be flying, if they are also obeying the law. So that number, though, that 400 feet means from the ground. So if you are on a cliff and you immediately fly over the cliff, well, your official number of how high up you are is the ground straight down. So if you are on top of a mountain 3,500 feet up in the air and you take off, legally you're supposed to be only be 400 feet from the ground. But this is where it gets kind of like the law and common sense should help you understand that you don't do stupid things with drones, because that's one of the first things that will get you in trouble and cause problems. I haven't, but that's
go stupid places, do stupid things, win stupid prizes.
Exactly. Exactly.
So you're saying if I went to the Grand Canyon and I'm standing beside the Grand Canyon, I can throw it up above me 400 feet and look down into the canyon. But as soon as I fly over the lip and the edge, theoretically, I've broken the law.
As if it is 400 feet above where the ground is directly underneath the drone. Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And then there's like if you're right next to the cliff, obviously there's not going to be any planes flying 10 feet away from the cliff. But if you were several hundred feet out, who knows who's flying that day? They might be doing something silly as well. So but that also brings us to flying around crowds. Is it going to be one of those places that you stop and it's a scenic overlook, and now you're flying the drone around a bunch of people, kids playing? And also, national parks are off limits. Absolutely off limits. One of the easiest ways to do that is under Google Maps. When you are under map view, anything that's in green is a no-fly zone.
So, yeah, I'm following you. So if you're using the terrain view, anything that's marked green because the national, okay, I got you.
Yep.
So that's a no-fly zone.
And I can definitely answer that right now. Per the statement you had just made, Grand Canyon is all in green. National Park, it is a no-fly zone.
Shocker. So where else are no-fly zones? Obviously airports, but where? What radius of airports?
5 miles is the official number. Last I had checked, is you do not want to be anywhere near an airport within 5 miles. But I have heard that trying to they're trying to rework that law, because if there is an airport and the arrivals and departures into this one little, let's say, grass runway is only going to be in one direction, flying, say, 4 miles at low altitude, uh, diagonal to it is not going to be a problem. And there's apps that really help you understand where the airports are in your area, where you can fly, what is considered a warning zone, what's considered a no-fly zone. And one of the best ones that I've seen is both for iOS and Android, called Before You Fly, spelled out. It's the letter B, the number 4, and then the letter U, fly.
Okay.
So it's Before You Fly.
Okay. And that one's actually just a drone app to kind of tell you fly, no-fly zones, kind of just general usage.
They've even updated it now to where it tells you like weather patterns. It tells you if it's going to rain or storm, or the wind is too high, or how well. Maybe you have a bigger drone and the wind doesn't matter. Maybe you have a smaller one does, but it'll let you know if it's okay to fly. And there's a lot more information it can give you too.
Okay. Yeah. So I do, and I also want to talk about the gyrometers too, not just all that stuff when we get to the use cases and the prices and stuff. I definitely want to talk about that. Which ones catch the wind and right themselves? Which ones return? Which ones can you set altitude and cruise or follow and all that kind of
Yep.
stuff? As long as we don't run out of time, I want to get into that. So you got no-fly zones. You've got the altitude. What are some of the other major laws or major gotchas that you would want to know about?
Well, the keeping the drone within line of sight is something you'll see all over the FAA's recommended information for flying a drone, and that is to.
What if you're wearing goggles or not?
that is supposed to be a situation where you have a spotter. You basically have somebody there with you who helps you keep an eye out for manned aircraft situations that you may need to be aware of. Somebody coming up behind you that was going to distract you, and now you don't even know what your drone is doing because you're turned around and you're talking to somebody. So there's supposed to be a level of control, or at least some layers that help you keep control, so the drone doesn't drift into a building or crash and then hit somebody's car, and now you're responsible for the property damage.
So, got a comment out there, and thank you for the clarification. That actually the laws on airports have been fixed. Even out in the country, there are airports which might make it difficult to find a spot. But with the smaller airports below 400 feet, and outside the area they are given that extends to the ground, you are okay. If you're near a larger airport, AirMap is an app also, apparently.
AirMap is a good one as well. That's a good recommendation.
Fly near those. And hi there to you too. Thanks for the content. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for the information. Okay, so sorry, yeah. And what are some of the other laws that we consider? So you got spotters, you got line of sight, you got
don't fly near a restricted airspace, no national park, that. And you're definitely not supposed to be flying over groups or crowds of people, because if anything was to go wrong, that's an easy target for the drone to just drop down, hit somebody on the head, depending on how heavy it is. It's going to cause some serious problems. If the blades are still spinning, cut them up.
I hate to be that guy. Okay, I hate to be that guy, but I am that guy. What do they define as a crowd, right? So, like, what if you're at a family reunion?
Groups of people. So that's I'm sure someone somewhere has given a definitive number, but as of right now, all I've got is groups of people, and that should be taken with common sense. As what do you think? Maybe 3, 4, 5 people that are gathered around you, the 10 people that are there. But an easy way to fix this is don't fly directly overhead of them. Stay off to the side, stay around. So if it was just to shut off and go straight down, it's going to land on a roof. It's going to land in a yard. It's going to land in the woods. It's not going to land on people or property that would cause damage.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. All right. So, and that's the major laws that you need to be aware of. Are there any other that might pick up, or any gotchas?
There are some. A lot of people think, oh wow, there's something going on over there. Look at all the fire department, look at fire trucks, the police officers. Whoa, hey, I can fly the drone over there and go check out what they're doing. If you want to get in trouble with the law, that is an absolute. You do not interfere with any type of emergency response efforts. You stay out of their way in the air and on ground.
Okay.
And one that is I don't know how often is followed is don't fly under the influence. Don't fly while
Really?
don't fly while intoxicated, as that would cause you to make dumb decisions such as flying over crowds or running into people.
Really? So now, okay. So I gotta pick a thread on this one. All right. So if I'm drunk and I'm out flying a drone, how, how and what is the enforcement? I mean, what even is that? I don't.
I would like to know that as well,
Okay.
because
So that's
you
just
can
a law
imagine
they put on the books that you haven't heard anything about yet. Okay.
you can
Fair enough.
imagine the police officer responding to drunken droning.
Drunken droning. Drunken droning. Yeah. I mean, why not? It's a thing. I mean, it's
Right?
it's a thing now. Drunken droning. I'm gonna have a T-shirt made up. You know, I'm not as drone as you drunk I am, or something. I don't know.
It's
Uh,
to prevent silly decisions that cause
yeah.
damage, get people in trouble, or get them hurt.
Again, go stupid places, do stupid things,
Yeah.
win stupid prizes. Yep, you got it. All right. Okay. So, any other major laws that you want to hit on before we start going into some of the use cases?
Um, I don't know if we wanted to get into using your drone for commercial use just yet.
We do, but we're going to get into that when we get into the use cases, and then well, yeah, we'll get into that in use cases and then in pricing, right?
Okay.
And because it makes a difference in pricing of whether you buy Wally World one versus a Mavic versus a five
Yeah.
thousand
Yeah.
dollar one, whatever. So
So
that to that point, that segues right on into the use cases. Before you go into the laws portion of it, though, and the permits and what you would need for that, just kind of give a broad, sort of broad stroke brush view of like personal use versus search and rescue, not for profit use versus surveillance, professionals or private investigators use versus military use versus law enforcement use, because government use would be, I'm sure, a different set of rules. I mean, let's be frank.
I would, yeah, and depending on the situation, I've even heard that for search and rescue purposes, if the town is involved and everyone's looking for something, then hey, we got to get drones in the air. We got to get something. As long as there's somebody in control, they can help look, but they'll consider that like an emergency situation. So they're a little more lenient on that. But the number one thing is hobby use. Most people will go to Best Buy and buy a drone or get one online and fly it out in their backyard. That is considered hobby use. You're not making money with it. You are just learning about it. You're not trying to cause any trouble. You're minding your own business. So a hobby flying is uh, anything from someone who's very very skilled and has spent tons of time with one, flying them just all over the place, with respect to the laws of not doing anything stupid. Um, uh, all in between. But the commercial use, the idea between and the only thing the FAA requires requests, I'm actually no, I'm pretty sure it's required now, is if you have a drone that weighs more than 250 grams, it needs to be registered with the FAA. And you think, okay, well, come on, register, well, get a license plate for it, and well, kind of. Yeah, registering a drone is like $5. It's not very much, but I do know that now, after having done it, the purpose of it is to educate people more than anything. So whoever's holding this card that says I have a FAA UAV, I don't want to call it a license, but it's a registered drone. That is the same as saying I have passed the little test to know that I don't fly over crowds of people. I don't fly higher than 400 feet. I don't chase wildlife with the drone, and I don't use it to peek inside people's windows. So you get to learn all the safety information about them for $5. And plus it helps if you are up in the air and someone was trying to figure out who was flying their drone near them, and they had a camera good enough to see it, or they could read those numbers on there. It's a way of identifying it. It's a way of these numbers being tied back to the pilot who is responsible for the drone that just broke through your bedroom window, or the drone that you just found smashed into the side of your gutters or something. I don't know. It's a way of it's a way of allowing the pilot to be responsible for their actions instead of just whistling away as they cause damage.
So real quick, I do want to circle back to laws before we go on to military law enforcement and to your fun story about the difference between personal and business use, and how the government's very helpful. The You mentioned flying and looking in somebody's window, so we didn't address that when we were talking about the laws. So what's the deal?
Uh, So there's something. There's two things I can think of when it comes to that. Is people think, well, on my own property, I can just do whatever I want. Well, the FAA would love to tell you no, because above. There was some court case of someone who said there was something flying above his property, and they, if I remember, it was back and forth. But ultimately, the FAA controls the airspace. Even if you launched a drone up with a big slingshot, that is still their airspace. They can still tell you quit launching that drone up in the air with a big slingshot. So whether it be your property or whether it be somebody else's property, it's the FAA's property. This is how they
Okay.
see it.
So then, so I'm not legally allowed to go in and look in some, like, fly over to my grandma's house and check on her, make sure she's okay.
Uh, if approval was given, and I'm sure there was no issues, in between, everybody knew what was going on. It was an agreed upon situation. Then that wouldn't be a problem.
So when you say approval was given,
Consent from the person that you're going to go check on.
And it is admissible in a court. So in other words, like if you changed your mind and said no, but you had it in writing.
Well, yeah. You would. That's same as if you were going to visit in person, and then they said, "Well, no, I didn't want them to come visit in person. They were spying on me."
They're right.
So,
they were trespassing or spying. Yep, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, so the same thing would apply for where I'm talking about when we talk about the subjects of reconnaissance and surveillance, particularly for advanced work in relation to advanced work for executive protection agents and so on, security. If you have previous permissions, like we were talking about, there's something to be said about the fact that if it's a life or death situation, like you're trapped in a riot and
right.
you're having to do what you have to do to get out of the environment, and you're locally sourcing. That's one conversation, right? Protection of life and continuation of your safety. But for true, actual legal compliance, do you suggest in those cases that the company have legal documentation and form in place ahead of time that they can hand off and have the venue sign?
That would be recommended, yeah, because in case anything that could go wrong, anything at all that could be, well, we didn't know there was going to be drones up there. I didn't know that, and I don't feel comfortable with it. And drones scare me and give me anxiety. Well, then there's all kinds of there's all kinds of situations where then the pilot could be held liable for, well, you didn't warn us that there was going to be a drone in the air. We didn't know. We thought maybe it was a threat. Maybe we were being attacked. So I mean, it can get weird.
Yeah, it sounds like it could definitely get weird. But it's just like with what's up, Midnight Range. Thanks for stopping in. I appreciate it. So just like when you're doing vulnerability assessment or penetration testing from a computer perspective or from a site security consultation perspective, you want to clearly define what it is you're going to be doing. Like, I'm going to try to break in your doors. I'm going to use magnetic disruption equipment to see if I can get your magnet door locks to break. Because then if I got in there and I broke the door,
right,
I may be responsible for that, right? So it's the same thing with the drones. Okay.
Yeah, cool. Liability. Yeah,
I didn't want to swing us back on this topic, but you mentioned that. So Midnight Range said that his sheriff's department has a drone buzzing around the 2A rally on Monday here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So that's a good segue, Midnight Range. So we were just getting ready to talk about the difference between personal use. We went over the laws, some of the need to knows to get started. We went over the laws, and we're going into the use cases between personal use versus law enforcement, military, and commercial use. And Scotty has a real fun story about something that happened to him very recently that now that he's, I guess, considered commercial at this point. I don't know. By the way, disclaimer before Scotty tells his story: Scotty has never done any work for me from a drone perspective. I've never made a penny off of him. I've never given him any money. He is just here because I know the guy and he's really good at what he does. I don't have any. He's never even shot footage for me. He's only even been to my range like once, and I don't know what he did with that footage. That was his business. But whatever. So,
the thing is, I do not have a Part 107 license because everything I have done up until now has been just a hobby. I've had friends over and I've shown them about the drone, helped them learn about it. We have studied all the different sensors and the way they connect and how to take off and what to do with the camera and the different modes. But I had really enjoyed that. I really enjoy helping people and helping them, learn more about them, and even helping them get into them and, getting them registered the way they're supposed to for safety. And so I had started this Alexander County Drone Center for the purpose of doing that, a social club, a nonprofit where people can can get together and have a place to charge their batteries and my fly in my backyard and above the trees where it's safe and you're not going to worry about any property damage or hurting anybody or anything. So there was the guys that mow my yard. Um, I was out there flying, and they were out there mowing the yard. And I was like, well, hell, I'll capture some footage of the great work that they were doing out there, and put together a little video that they could post on their own Facebook page and say, give us a call if you need your yard mowed. Well, that video got posted. And it was about 4 weeks later, now today, that
this just happened today, by the way, guys. All y'all watching
today.
This literally happened before, because I was looking at Facebook and I was like, why can't I go to his Facebook page?
Yeah.
The government's being super helpful.
So I get a call from a gentleman out of the Charlotte FAA, who we had a good conversation about what exactly the Alexander County Drone Center is, and he was looking through and said that really there is no issue whatsoever. Weaponized. There's no issue. However, there was a video that's posted on there that has a lawn care's phone number and is technically a commercial. And regarding drones and flying video cameras, basically, if you are using them for commercial use, even if you made no money with them, the people who made money from that footage, from that commercial, there's still money being made, and therefore it's considered commercial. So that's where a Part 107 license would be required, not just for the footage of the lawnmowers in the backyard, but also for real estate, also for professional use where you're making money filming weddings or parties or whatnot. So the Part 107 license is a requirement for anything that would involve money or professional use, or making commercials for other people who make money, or even for like news agencies, or who are going to use that footage in their broadcast where they make money off advertisements. So it's very important to have that. He pretty much said there's no problems. Let's just go ahead and get it taken down. We'll put an aim on there in case there's any other craziness. But his job was to make sure people don't get in trouble further than they should for something simple like this. So
they're being very, very helpful. Thank God for them.
I'm very happy to help pay a salary.
I will play devil's advocate on this one a little bit. So the commercial part, okay, that's arguable that's free market society, and you have to pay for all kinds of business insurance and business fees and business licensing and so on and so forth. It's a separate conversation, right? The libertarian in me is screaming at that. But the regulations about being able to fly in other people's airspace, those kinds of things, impeding on other people's property and so on and so forth, that's a different conversation, right? I mean, I get where, okay, so maybe we need to talk about regulations for that as a society and come up with that. It's a cool deal for that. I understand. But so did he offer you the option? First off, how much is the license that you're talking about? Secondly, did he offer you the option to pay the fee and keep the video up?
There was never even a discussion of fee or anything like that. I simply just said, well, I can take that video down, no problem. And he was hinting at that's what he wanted to have happen. So the video was taken down. No harm, no foul, according to him. So since the drone center and everything else that I had pushed towards really did not have any traffic, so I just went ahead and took the extra step to go ahead and move any other instances where they might want to give me a phone call.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, but again, though, had you have paid him the money on the phone that day over your debit card, so that Nigerian prince could just get over here, could you have left it up and it been grandfathered in, or how does that work?
I would love to know the answer to that. I never even took it that far with him, so I don't know.
One of the viewers just mentioned, even if you've been doing it and making money, even if you don't make money for years, and suddenly you do, that leads into that question. So, okay, so let's say that you decided you wanted to be a professional wedding videographer, right? And then, but you had all this other content that could be construed as advertisement for your business, to where now you're doing videography, because you want to show some of your experience. So
that is a very gray area that I would recommend speaking to the fine folks at the FAA to get confirmation on.
So, and Midnight asked a good question. Not a guy who uses a drone to shoot videos of his guns. Should he have a license? Since he is a monetized channel, I will throw in this as well. midnight range TM. So for those of us in the reviews industry, by the way, for those of you who don't know, I do reviews for gear-report.com. Please go check that out, as well as on my Minor Ridge Armory channel here. You can check out the content below what we're watching right now in my playlists. Let's say I get sent a $1,000 rifle, right? So that's, there's tax implications there, and there's things you have to consider there. And the channel's monetized, and or it's pushing business over to Gear Report, which is not my business, it's somebody else's business. So would it just be easier just to go get the license? How much does that license cost?
From what I understand, it's around $107. It's
a Form 107, and it's $107.
Yeah, it's not that bad. But from what I've heard, the people who go to take the test complain about is that they have you learn about stuff that you will never use with drone flight and flying drones, such as having to read the nautical miles of paper map whenever flying your drone. There's a lot more information to pull out of that, and the amount of questions that come from what is hobby and what is commercial, and how all of that blends and blurs together in that weird gray area. That I'm sure that they are fighting a battle that they may not have expected would have been so difficult.
So perfect point here, I think, or perfect point here. Better safe than sorry. If you're going to drop that kind of coin for a drone, go and spend $107 and get the permit just in case.
Yeah.
What he meant to say was he knew a guy who used to own a drone, and it got lost in a boating accident. That's what he meant to say.
So much stuff gets lost in boating accidents.
That is so sad. Sad. So that leads us into price points, right? So we talked about the different use cases. We've talked about some of the laws. We've talked about what do I need to know, and he just segued very well into price points with the $107 for the licensing. And we talked about the Wally World drone versus a good quality commercial one. So talk to me about low, medium, and high price drones. What to look for? What am I going to want to know for gimbal and for stabilization? What do I need to know? Return videos.
Oh yeah. Anything from the so we'll cover just real as fast as I can from the small, little, inexpensive, still has a gimbal, still has GPS, still will return to home if you lose signal, but has excellent quality, all the way up to an Inspire, several $1,000s. You can have multiple. You can have a pilot and someone who controls the camera with or without goggles on your head to be able to see exactly what they're seeing. Hot swappable dual battery and SD card for broadcast quality. Anyways, so for someone who just wanted to say, look, I definitely want to get into this, I want to learn more about it, I have had a very, very good experience with the DJI Mavic Mini, which is under 250 grams. So it does not require being registered with the FAA, since it doesn't weigh much more than a large bird. The footage on that is phenomenal. The distance on that, it is Wi-Fi, but it is extended Wi-Fi that with the controller that helps boost the signal. You may have trouble going through a metal building, but you still get excellent behavior quality, the flight controls, everything. It's very light. So any bit of wind, you run into trouble. That thing runs around, I'm going to say the Flymore package was like $800, give or take. And you get a couple of batteries with it. Great drone. The next one up is the brand new Mavic Air 2. And again, I keep saying Mavic and DJI, and I keep focusing on those products, as that's what I've done a lot of studying on. So I can speak very, very fluently on those. But the Mavic Air 2 is one that is supposed to be the beautiful middle ground between the cheapest, lightest one to one that's going to be highly capable with lots of sensors to keep it from running into things, keep it from hitting the ground or a tree, even a system they call APAS, which lets it, if you're flying towards something, fly around it instead of coming to a dead stop and making you figure something else out.
And it does that on its own. It just knows.
Correct. As long as it has the APAS system. And then the Mavic Pro 2 has so many sensors on it. It can tell how close it is to the ceiling, the wall, and the ground all at the same time. Even when flying in low light conditions, it has little LED lights that turn on to help it land. Extraordinary features on this thing, but they can run up to, if you get the controller and the goggles and everything, into like $2,000 something.
Plus $107 for the permit.
plus the 107 for the permit. Yeah, because if you're getting the Mavic Pro 2, if you're getting that as a hobby, then you're gonna have a lot of fun uh, with your hobby. Um, the Inspire series though is the one that is definitely up there for like filmmaking. It's for it, it's a lot cheaper than renting a helicopter and holding a camera out the side of it while you're flying through the air, and paying for the pilot and the fuel. But those are the bigger ones. They're definitely not compact. They do not fold into any small portable size. But they are much bigger. They don't really care too much about wind. They have the dual, the newer one, Inspire 2, has a dual battery. And those are the ones that has a pilot camera on the front of it, a little 720p pilot camera, so the person can make sure that they're going to fly the course that was asked of them, while the camera operator, who has a second controller, can control the camera on the bottom that can rotate in all all directions. There's nothing in its way to keep it from looking in any direction at any time.
And now that's the Inspire, did you say?
The Inspire, yeah. And oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and so after we get past this one, we'll segue into search and rescue. This sounds like exactly where one. So you're saying It has 2 gyrometers as well as the gimbal for stabilization, image stabilization, and it has the ability to carry more weight.
Correct. Usually you'll see the Inspire 2 having, they usually have the lenses that are mounted to a quick connect for the bottom. But I've really noticed if you are dead set on absolutely filming with a DSLR or even like a RED camera or something that's going to be, the camera's going to probably cost more than the drone itself. Those are mounted onto some of their higher end drones like the Matrice series, and those have 8. There's one that has 6 blades. There's another one that has 8 blades. But those are also the ones that you can mount the flamethrowers to.
Hold that thought. That's going to be the last thing we talk about here. And we're already coming up on 50 minutes, so we're going to have to step it up a little bit. But so real quick, I do want to spin off on Midnight's question or Midnight's comment here. And I want to ask one question and then come back to the Inspire for load carrying. But if somebody breaches, because this comes up, right? I hear it all the time. Can I consider that like a sporting clay with my shotgun if I catch one out flying over my property that I don't want there?
That is a great question, and the FAA will be quick to have you in court saying, so you will not be shooting at things in the air ever again. It is absolutely illegal to shoot down any flying object out of the air unless it's something you've put up there yourself, like a clay or your own drone. If you shoot at anybody else's, anything else, it is absolutely something that can get you in hot water. Even if it's as simple as a dispute with a neighbor, well, that can turn into a court case that the FAA would love to be on the side of the person whose drone got shot down.
Fair enough. Well, and there's also physics, just throwing that out there. So, with a shotgun, it's not as much, but with a rifle, if you're trying to hit it with a rifle, physics, that bullet doesn't just stop and, once it gets right there, it's going to continue going, and land somewhere. So back to the Inspire and load bearing capability. So the Inspire obviously is pretty hefty, and it's a 2-man rig and so on and so forth. How much weight can you mount to it?
I will have to look that up to get an answer on it. But as far as like for search and rescue purpose, if that was where that question was coming from,
that's where it's going, and to like the heat sensing equipment and stuff, where you were talking about some of the local search and rescue teams that you've dealt with in the past.
So the Mavic Pro has a version called Mavic Pro Enterprise or Mavic Pro 2 Enterprise. The Enterprise is a very special edition of that has a hot shoe on the top of the drone for you to be able to mount things such as searchlights, loudspeakers. There's even like a bright flashing strobe light that you can get on the top of there. All the while, what's mounted to the gimbal underneath is a dual lens camera system. One is a 2x optical zoom lens next to a FLIR thermal camera. So perfect scenario would be in the wintertime flying over top of trees. There's no leaves on the trees. So as the drone is looking straight down, anything that's putting off a heat signature is going to light up. You could switch right over to the other cameras, zoom right in onto it, and through the app, if I remember, there's a way that you compare it to if you spot something with that drone, you can hover right over top of it, push the button, it'll send the coordinates to your team to pull it up on their phone or whatever and head straight to it. So awesome. You don't even have to radio numbers to them. You can just say, go here, done.
So geotagging, geofencing, and heat sensing. And but you're saying the enterprise model, you can mount that to it. It doesn't come with it, right?
Oh, the enterprise model does come with that. That's what its special
Really?
edition is for. It's for search and rescue. It's for police officer use. It is intended for firefighters and other emergency rescue type situations.
And how much is the Mavic Pro 2 Enterprise?
Yep, yeah, Mavic Pro 2 Enterprise. It is, last I had seen, if you were to get just the base model of it, it's still around $2,000. But all the accessories that go with it, such as the spotlight, the loudspeaker, it can get up there at about $3,000, $3,500, depending on how many accessories you keep going with it. A case with it, and so on and so forth.
Well, yeah, but just to be frank, and I'm getting ahead of myself on that, but that's okay because this is a topic that we don't need to run into the ground necessarily, but it's a tax deduction, right? I mean, if you're using it for videography, if you're using it for
Right.
local law enforcement, local fire and rescue, if you're using it with legitimate purpose and intent with the $107 permit we were talking about for private detection, surveillance, so on and so forth, it's a tax deduction, right? So who cares? But I say who cares, but $2,000, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So. But weight limit. Did you find the weight limit of what the Enterprise will carry?
So the Mavic
or the
Pro
Inspire. Sorry,
is not intended to carry any additional things other than, say, the little accessories that they've designed to fit onto the hot shoe on top of them. But the Inspire 2 payload capacity is 7.5 pounds. And that is including propellers, 2 batteries, without gimbal camera. Inspire 2 maximum takeoff weight 9 pounds, including gimbal and camera. So it looks like it can carry just under 10 pounds.
Okay. Preach it, by the way. We're talking about the Peep and Tom laws and surveillance and so on and so forth. That's true. There are other laws as well if you're within city limits. But I think the video that Midnight's referring to, I think, was out in the country. I think I've seen it. I'm not sure. But so 7.5 pounds. So does anybody by chance know how much the X Products flamethrower weighs? Can you look that up?
I want to correct the statement here. It says that the drone itself is 7.5 pounds, including the batteries, propellers, everything. The takeoff weight, maximum takeoff weight, including gimbal and camera, is 9. So it's the whole drone itself is just under 9 pounds.
Okay.
I can keep trying to get some information here for you on the payload weight.
No, I don't think we need to. But my point is, though, of where I was going with that, with search and rescue and reconnaissance and surveillance, which was the next 2 topics I was going to cover in a row, and we've already touched on the search and rescue. You're saying that they already build models specifically designed for those, and with that intent at a specific price point to where you don't have to get into it. Correct. So. And reconnaissance and surveillance, we've already touched on, some of the laws, some of the perimeter laws, aerial laws. We've touched on, again, sourcing locally if you had to go to Wally World and pick one up, and what the capabilities and stuff are there, what the limitations of the units would be at the different price points, and again, the legalities of getting paperwork signed ahead of time. We've touched on the tax deduction. So there's really pretty much only one topic left to talk about.
Flamethrower. Well, let's go
flamethrowers.
Weaponizing
it. So what are the laws? What's payloads? What's the capability?
There is a very legitimate use of putting a flamethrower on a drone.
Is that an AOW? Is that an AOW? Any other weapon, right? I mean,
right.
You need a tax stamp for that? Is the government is a $200 tax stamp? I don't know.
A situation where fabric or a parachute or something was wrapped up around a line that it was just very difficult to get to, and it would just be easier to burn it off of there, or a very dangerous, hornet hive that was near people, or something that couldn't be captured any other way, or something where it would be a legitimate use to get flame throwing in a very hard to reach place, that would just make sense. So now I'm sure there's some very special rules to be able to do something like that, but there's plenty of videos online of it. But there was a very interesting thing that came up. People who were putting fireworks on their drones, lighting the fuse, sending the drone up there, and now this thing's shooting fireworks. There was a statement that yes, that is technically considered weaponizing a drone, and so from what I remember, the people had gotten in big trouble for doing so.
So we just had a couple comments. Number one is that, as far as most states have already got well ahead of that, and put in place laws to not be able to weaponize drones. Shocker, right? I mean, now that saying, Sorry, I skipped ahead there on midnight. That saying though, they can do it though. They can do whatever they need to, right? And then that mentioned something about that insulin, or if it's like somebody who's flying in medicines. If you knew somebody who needed heart pills or whatever, they've been injured, a mechanical injury of falling, and they can't get out. Search rescue, you've geotagged them. You took in medicine. That's a great use for it too from search and rescue, like if they were camping, and then there you go, already
Yep.
being carried. Oh, so I think what they're talking about there is that they're already using them for relief efforts as well. So not just search and rescue, but actual relief efforts. So that's great. That's a good idea. So bottom line, everybody out there, I know you've watched for an hour and listened to us drone on
Nice.
for an hour just to get to the punchline of, can you weaponize it? Unfortunately, you cannot. Unfortunately, you cannot weaponize a drone. You can use it as tax deduction so long as you're getting the proper permits and you're going through all the testing and all that kind of stuff. You can use it for search and rescue. You can use it for surveillance as long as you've got your legal I's and your paperwork, legal I's dotted, your T's crossed, and your paperwork in place. But you cannot weaponize a drone. So, unfortunately, not yet. I mean, again, Skynet, we're getting there, but we're not there yet, right? So
I,
we're pushing up on an hour, Scotty. I want to respect all the viewers' time, and not drag them out too much longer. But is there any other information you want to share? Any other fun stories? Anything you think they would need to know? Anything that would be beneficial for everybody out there in YouTube's land?
military situation that came to mind whenever you mentioned drones and weaponizing them. I did hear about some of the earlier drones that people have been getting a hold of and using over in unknown locations, where they will basically attach mortars to them, get way above, since they're not on any type of network, they're not being tracked, or there's not putting out any type of signal other than what the controller is telling it to do. Pointing the camera straight down, getting 300 feet right over top of a target, and then using a custom dropper to literally drop the mortar from the drone straight onto its target. And from what I've seen, a couple of videos online of people saying that in some areas, if they see a drone in the air, they have to shoot it down, because you don't know if it's up there for pictures or if it's up there for dropping a payload.
Okay, so I do want to throw out a name then, and again, this gentleman, you know, this gentleman is, I'm in no way affiliated with him whatsoever. Again, I don't work with the guy. I've never worked with the guy. I've never been to one of his classes. I have seen a lot of his online content and attended virtually a lot of his online courses and stuff. And I kind of follow some of his content, again, for escape and evasion, surveillance, counter surveillance, those types of topics. I follow this guy. He's one of the guys I follow, and I consider myself, blessed to be educated and to try to be that executive protection dad for my wife and my children, because of the content that he shares with me. And you just spurred a thought in my head. So there's a gentleman by the name of Ed Calderon. Just Ed Calderon. He is a Mexican national who went through that drug cartel area where the military and law enforcement actually tried to rein them in and control them. And then he went over, until the government turned on him and that kind of thing. And then he went into the private sector and did, security and so on and so forth. Where I'm going with that is he talks a lot about, and if you'll follow his content on Facebook and some of the, like the Ed's Manifesto website and stuff, he does articles and stuff about signal jammers, like homemade signal jammers, the 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz for jamming those levels of signals. And he makes them out of like Raspberry Pis or Arduinos and things like that.
Interesting.
And, yeah, it's very interesting. So you made me think about that, right? So I mean, if by chance you were in a non-regulated country where drones were not regulated and they were being used for malicious intent, then there are options and ideas and things you can do to stop them and bring them down without actually discharging a firearm. There are electronic and scientific or technical methods of bringing them down. Or you can just take out a shotgun. But I mean, shotgun isn't going to reach 400 or 500 feet up in the air. So your effective range you're out of your effective range. And
Right.
a target that small at that distance, even the most experienced designated defensive marksman is not going to be able to hit that. So
They're hard to even see with the naked eye.
Yeah, or hear.
Or here, yeah. I saw one get taken down with a laser recently, so that was kind of cool. And not in person, but there is a video of someone of a drone being taken down with a laser. And that was another way of, I guess, trying to keep drones out of their space without having to discharge a firearm.
Yeah, got it. That's a good idea too. There, Midnight. I don't know how many of those you could get in and out without them getting shot down, but anything you could do if they're under suppression fire and they need reinforcements backup. Okay. On that note, I think we're going to sweep the floors and close the doors. So, Scotty, I would tell you to advertise your Facebook page and your website, but apparently you have taken it down because the FAA was very, very helpful for you today, and so you have taken down your website. So, is there any other plug you want to do for content or channel or anything like that?
I highly encourage looking at as many different reviews as you can of any drones you may be interested in, because there's a million of them out there, and you'll find more information than you knew you were even after. So do the reviews before you buy.
Okay, good deal. All right, and for those of you out there who are watching, thank you for sticking with us this long to the end. For those of you who are watching this in replay, again, please like, subscribe, ring the bell, leave questions down below if you didn't get in here while we were streaming live and get some comments. I'll try to get back to you and answer them as quickly as I possibly can, or get the information from Scotty. I just published a couple new reviews over at gear-report.com. And I'm just also updated the Mining Ridge Armory YouTube channel, as well as some of the content for some of the courses and some of the classes I'm teaching at the miningridgearmory.com. All of my links to social media can be found on miningridgearmory.com. Thanks again for joining. Until we see you out on the range again, you keep living your dream.